Hey, it's Karina Reichman, and you are listening to Comes a Time with Oteil Burbridge and Mike Fenoya. If you're digging the podcast, do these guys a favor and review and subscribe. It means a lot. Be sure to follow the pod on social media, YouTube, and if you're joining for bonus episodes and exclusive content, go to patreon.com/comesatimepod and get on the bus. And now, here's Mike and Oteil.
What's up, good people? Welcome back to Comes a Time. This is another solo episode I'm doing because at the recording of this, Mike was still doing all kinds of promo and stuff for his special, Don't Let Me Down. If you haven't seen it, go check it out everywhere that you can find all things Mike Fenoya on YouTube, Instagram. I'm not sure if he does Facebook, but go look there. 800-Pound Gorilla, they put it out. Go check their site also. It's called Don't Let Me Down. Mike Fenoya is killing it. I've seen it a couple times. It's really, really funny. Super great. But that's why I'm doing this one solo. There's a few of these coming out. This one is with my old buddy, Dean Budnick. We go way, way, way back in this jam band scene, which he really coined the term for. He gives someone else the credit for actually coming up with the term, but he's certainly the one that has popularized it in the mainstream as far as we've penetrated. Just pretty far now. Dean Budnick is an American writer, filmmaker, college professor, podcast creator, and radio host who focuses on music, film, and popular culture. He is the editor-in-chief of Relics magazine. That's probably where a lot of you guys know him, but don't know him. He wrote his first book as a grad student about fish called The Fishing Manual, and a book about our scene called Jam Bands. He also started jambands.com way back then. And he started a podcast about music whose first season was centered on fish. He's written a few books, one with my old buddy John Popper, which I probably shouldn't say the title of until my kids get older. But it's autobiographical. Wrote a really interesting book with Josh Barron called Ticket Masters. And it's about the whole scene of how that grew up and the craziness around it. He wrote that with Josh Barron, my buddy that lives down here. We bike sometimes. Many of you have had your frustrations with Ticketmasters. Might make you feel better to know Charles Dickens was pissed off about scalpers back in the 1800s. So, yeah, it's been going on a long time. Did a really interesting documentary called Wetlands Preserve, the story of an activist rock club. That was a club in New York that really was kind of like the epicenter in New York City of this whole scene. It's crazy to see myself in it and all my friends being very young. I tell you what, the time flies really quickly, but that place was different than any club I'd ever played in my life. It was singular, kind of like New Orleans. And one of my favorite books he did was with the legendary promoter Peter Shapiro, who's the one that took over that club, and at that point is where me and my buddies entered the story. But he wrote this autobiographical book with Peter Shapiro called The Music Never Stops, which is really a great read and just came out on paper book, which is why we had Dean on the podcast to talk about that and take a trip down memory lane. It's amazing how many times we have intersected, or how far back that goes a long way back. Time travels fast. This is one of my favorite episodes. Dean is such a sweetheart, such a super smart guy. We have so many memories together, and he has a better memory about it than me. A lot of times, it's nice hearing how it looked from his vantage point, and I'm really grateful to him for documenting all these many years. So yeah, check it out, you guys. New people, go to all our places where you find podcasts, and we're on YouTube. We're on most podcast platforms. We have some extra content that we put out on patreon.com/comesatimepod. You can find us on everywhere. Please like, share, subscribe, rate, review, all the things you can think of to do. It really helps us out. Thank you to Eric Lee Marenko, our tech that does so much work that you guys don't see, but that you do see on the Patreon, and editing all these videos and all the cool stuff that happens, even animated films. So you guys enjoy. One of the first times I remember meeting you was I guess the first time we did that interview when I first joined the Allman Brothers Band. And that was 97. That's when I found out you were the one that actually told me about jam bands. You were like, what does it feel like to be one of the pioneers of jam bands? And I was like, I'm not sure what that is.
Yeah, I was looking at that interview actually last night. It's fun and fascinating, and I would ask so many of the same questions today, because I do think they're applicable. But you have such a unique perspective on everything. I remember that. So that was the year, right? You actually, your debut with the ABB was in June at Great Woods. And that was back during the time, right, where you'd come around twice to Great Woods during the summer, because it was such a great market for the brothers.
That's right.
And then the second time you came around in August. We did that interview in your hotel room, and it was a long, fun interview. Like we were all, I used only a fraction of it that was able to run, and it's still an 8-page interview. But it was a great hang. And I had seen you in action for so many years before then, and I was so excited that you had been tapped for that gig. I'd seen you at Wetlands with ARU back in the day.
With the Colonel.
There you go, sir. Nice. I saw you at the very, very first Horde show in Portland in 92, which was a really momentous day for me and a lot of other people, because sort of, right, pre-internet, thereabouts, I was on like a Usenet news group. Some people were on the Well, but you couldn't really communicate. And so to show up at Cumberland County Civic Center and all of a sudden realize, this scene, sort of like to, reference the Grateful Dead, we are everywhere. There were so many people. And you'd see people with ARU shirts, you'd see people with Panic shirts, you'd see people with Fish shirts, you'd see people with Traveler shirts. It was just amazing. It was just amazing.
And it makes me realize when you talk about like Usenet and stuff, it's like, well, that's why I didn't know what a jam band was, because I wasn't on the internet. I didn't have a smartphone, or, you know what I mean? I just was like, we were just out on the road pounding it with the Colonel, just knocking him down. Very early days of Fish, Widespread, Blues Traveler, all of us, Yeah,
and I mean, and just like, to my mind, especially talking about the Colonel, just doing it right. I have so many memories of just pretty insane stuff, musically and otherwise, coming off the stage. It really kind of informed my worldview in a lot of respects. I really do think it's glad where I am today. Because of, in part, of what you all were doing.
Yeah, he was the catalyst for all of it. My life was going to be not the normal life because I had chosen to be a bass player, but from in that lane, it was going to be a lot more normal. And then I met Bruce, and the whole thing just went over a cliff. Thank God, you know. But it's funny to hear you say something like that, because I just would like to highlight his impact on everybody and on this whole scene. It's really been something to, you know, it's one thing when I talk to like Popper, you know, or Trey, or any of the guys in Fish, Page, Mike, Fishman, or if I talk to Dave Matthews about the Colonel, about, you know, talking any of the widespread guys about the Colonel, it's kind of a given, like all the influence that he's had on us. But then when you have Steve Parrish on the show and he starts talking about the Colonel, and then I realize, oh, he's talking about 1969. He's not talking about like recently, you know.
Yeah.
That's when it starts to get deep, you know. It's like,
yeah. Well, so, you know, I was just interviewed for the next Government Mules on the next Relics cover, and I was interviewing
awesome.
Kevin Scott, the bass player, right?
I love him. I got to get him on here.
Right. And he, by the way, he's got a great perspective on everything. Obviously, he played with the Colonel.
Played with the Colonel. Came through that school.
But before that, he had, you know, he was in a family band, and so he had an extended family of people who played out in Atlanta in the area. So he had relatives and friends of relatives who knew the Colonel back from that era as well. It's just amazing.
I've never, no one will ever surprise me that the Colonel knew somebody. Like if I go to Tajikistan and, you know, and they'd be like, this guy knows the Colonel, I'd be like, not surprised. He was such a worldly, interplanetary, actually, that's why Tajikistan wouldn't surprise me, because Jupiter, or a planet in another galaxy, it wouldn't surprise me. So why would any place on Earth surprise me, you know?
Well, that's like kind of, and this is a totally different thing, but I would say, I don't know how many times you saw this, but I saw this a dozen times, 18 times, when he just guesses someone's birthday. And so, but I long since taken for granted that that's just what he does. But to be there with people when it happens to them for the first time, and their just minds are blown, I'm like, oh yeah, it's the Colonel. I just think, oh, it's the Colonel. That's what he does. But
it's funny because people now I have the situation where I'm talking with people because he's passed, and they'd be like, oh yeah, he gets my birthday. Because I'll ask them, like, did you ever get to meet him? Did you get to hang with him? They're like, yeah, he gets my birthday. It's just constant. But that was only one of the things that he did that was that freaky.
You know? No, yes. No, he was just on another plane,
He was the ET for sure. Yeah. No question. And a spiritual whatever. We get lost in semantics when we talk about it, but he's one of those cats, you know, touched or whatever you want to say. Crazy. Sometimes they call him crazy and lock him up, you know.
In another generation, or, you know, 100 years prior, you know, I don't. He's like Rasputin, kind of, but a nice version. You know.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I'm glad to always hear this influence. Like he's not gone. You know, it's like Miles will never be gone. Coltrane will never be gone. Jerry will never be gone. You know, he's still here because he touched so many people. It's crazy.
Well, you know, honestly, like Miles is a good example, because you think of the people that came through that band, either of the quintets or what happened later. And in a similar way, look at all the people that the Colonel has touched and where they are out in the world. I do think that's an apt analogy that doesn't quite maybe get its due, but it's unquestionable.
Yeah, especially when you consider like the southern part of it, you know, like I see where I had this idea that I was going to play jazz rock instrumental fusion music. That's what my heroes did, and that's where I was going. And then I met the Colonel, and I ended up playing with these two bands that are kind of the East and West Coast versions of each other. And I think it's even deeper. There's a other layer, not deeper in comparison to the Grateful Dead, but there's another layer with the Allman Brothers being the East Coast version, but from the South.
Yes.
because all this American music comes from the South. you know,
No,
it's heavy.
It is, and I think, listen, one of these days I want to dig in and write. I mean, people have done lovely books around here and there. There's a Colonel book. I kind of want to dig in and maybe tell that story writ large. I just think it's still, some of it is still untold.
Yeah, there's a crazy, and I have to find it and send it to you. Please remind me afterwards. My buddy David Brendel, that lives in New York City, who's not a musician, but he knows so much more about music than I do because he's just such a fanatic about it, and he was the one that turned me on to the Dickinson brothers and all this stuff, and made me realize that Jim Dickinson was their dad. I met them through the Colonel, but he had this website that this guy put together that details all this stuff of the Colonel going back to his very first shows, like interactions, like when somebody pulled a gun on him in this one club and how he got out of it with his kind of Colonel Bruce, like all this stuff that I never seen before. I was like, oh, so I hope you do that book, because whoever this cat is, we need to put you in touch with him.
That is fair. By the way, I was just thinking of this. We were talking about ARU on Horde, right? So this is the book that I did with Popper a few years ago. And I was just, I was just thinking of all the ways, you and all that. And he was just talking about, this is it. This is Popper. With Horde, there would be the money side of things and the artistic side of things, and we tried to make them balance. One of the ways we did that was to make sure we put Aquarium Rescue Unit on the bill. That felt right to us. Horde was laden with mitzvahs, and you got them done back to you.
Yes.
And I think that's they were great. I mean, so many people I know first saw you on that tour because they fought to have you on when, the way these things go, once it goes to the promoters, ARU clearly the least known of those acts on the bill.
They wanted us off of there so bad. They were like, why do these guys have to be on it? And eventually they got us off of it. But I will never forget when they told me that Fish and Blues Traveler and Widespread Panic all said, if they're not on it, we're not doing it. I mean, they literally stood down the man for us, and we were nobody. I mean, there was no reason for us to be there. But I tell you, when I went through Lakewood Amphitheater and a bunch of these other amphitheaters that I first played on with the Horde, which is important because when I got to the Allman Brothers, it wasn't all new to me. There were some of those amphitheaters that I had played already, and I was used to the difference and what it sounded like and all that. But when I went through there on this last final Dead and Company tour, man, the meaning it had for me was so deep because I shot back to the very first time at Lakewood Amphitheater. I'd never played a place that big. In Atlanta, that's where we were from. And it was overwhelming. I couldn't even process it. It was just too much for me to process. But now to look back on it, and it's also a little scary and you count the years that passed.
I do hear you there.
For both of us, right?
I would say, though, I'm just going to say this. You weren't, I'm not sure if you said the phrase was, we were nothing. You weren't nothing, man. You guys were elevated. And that's why you were just doing something. I understand you weren't a commercial draw.
We were only something to Fish, Widespread Panic, and Blues Traveler, and nobody else. But you know what? That was enough. Thank you, God, because that was enough, because it was a miracle. We were like, what are we doing here? The same way like with Widespread Panic and getting their record deal and then telling Johnny Sandlin, hey, man, you got to check out this crazy. And he knows the Colonel from way back. But they said, let's listen to it. And Capricorn Records is probably the only label that would have taken a chance on a band so crazy and claimed it as part of their own Southern heritage and put it on a pedestal in what little way they could. And it was enough. It was enough for all of us to build careers off of, But
history has proven them right, man. Look at
over and over.
Look at what,
Yeah.
you look what you've done. Look what Jimmy's done. Look what Sipes done. I mean, it was the right answer. There's just no doubt about that.
But I like what you say about the Colonel being a sort of Miles Davis. Like, obviously he's not, because not as many people know the Colonel as know Miles Davis, but he is in a way. And there's all these kind of characters like Bruce that I have found in different parts of the country, and I search out the Bruces, the anomalies, the guys that had a lot of influence. There's a comedic guy. Oh, what's his name? It's escaping me right now, but I just watched a documentary on him. But all the comedians know who this guy is. And he's like had this thing. It was like, is it poetry? Is it performance art? Is it just complete dada? What are we? But he influenced so many comics. And Bruce, I think, is definitely, especially for our scene,
I think that's important. I think you need to have like musicians, artists, writers who inspire, other people working in that field and who can appreciate what they're doing and take something from it and try to elevate that within their own, framework from their perspective. And maybe that initial figure doesn't quite get his due or her due, but they're the ones that really set everything in motion.
Well, in Bruce's case, it's interesting because he totally could have gotten his due, but he would destroy it if it was even on the brink of happening. He did it with us. It's like he would deconstruct it because he didn't want the fame side of it. I mean, look what it did for Jerry, right? So he knew, he had seen it happen to so many people. He was like, no. I just want to be the catalyst. He wants to be the guy stirring the pot, Which I love.
Well, if you think about it, right, that happened right after that with Code Talkers too. That's when I finally realized that's what was going on, because they were right on the brink and actually doing really well. And then all of a sudden he's like, okay,
he deconstructed it. He's done it since the 60s. I mean, Music to Eat is really just a masterpiece. It's the best thing he's ever done. And it's still just a marvel. It's like if Sun Ra and these white hippie guys from Georgia who were born in like the 40s drank the same thing, which they did because they drank Sun Ra. What am I saying? Sun Ra was the drink. And to hear, like, it's the architecture of it, it's the compositions and the clash of form and chaos, just everything. It's just a masterpiece. And he did that in 1969 when he was a kid, and all this whole band. So he knew then, and he deconstructed that. A funny story about you probably know this from watching the documentary on him, but Skinner got signed for $9,000 in that same time period. Phil Walden sold that to Clive Davis, that double album, for $300,000. The guy that signed the Colonel lost his job over it, and he tells the story in the documentary and starts crying because it was a really good gig. And Clive Davis said, that is not coming out of the whole story is just like too much to be true. It's just too much.
By the way, moving on a little bit, I doubt you recall this, right? Just thinking, you're talking about jam bands and you're thinking about like, our paths entwining. So Halloween, 1998, this is like a Gamelan show, right? Andrew Stahl, that took place at the Somerville Theater. Here's the thing. Reading the bill. Percy Hill, CD release. O'Teal and the Peacemakers with Addison Groove Project, plus a Halloween treat, Dean Budnick's new book called Jam Bands. And so if you look at the original thing, you can see that my original Jam Bands book, that was the release show. And there's in the corner there, and you played it, Which
did I meet you? Did I? That what year was that?
98. We'd already met.
Okay, so we had met then. Yeah, it was after. That's awesome. Oh, I love the Somerville Theater.
Yeah, that's
a great place, man.
think about, I mean, just think about that. Or remember, here's another one that occurred to me. So when Butch Trucks was putting together his label, right, Flying Frog, you came out for and I did a jambands.com tour, summer of '99. You came out for the first few shows, and it was pretty wild. And just for me, the pleasure of the whole thing was sitting down, having a few meals with yourself and Butch, because, Butch has a glass of wine, has a fine, and he's good to go. And it's just so great. But aside from that, the first show we played was at the TLA, Theater of the Living Arts in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
And
Love
the Slip was on the bill.
Oh,
and
they're
Slip,
great. They're so
are they not?
good.
One of my favorites. And they showed up late. And the production manager at the venue refused to let them go on. Refused to even let them sound check. He's like, "There's no way." He said, Paul Simon was here a couple of weeks ago. He got here on time. And the Slip, they're good. They got lost. It's Philadelphia. They got lost. And so I saw something that was just so rock and roll. Butch, who wanted to sign them to Flying Frog, and he did a number of months later. He's like, "Okay, that's it. Give me the phone. Do you have a phone? Do you have a phone, Dean?" And he called, or Dr. Budnick, that's what he'll call me. "You have a phone, Dr. Budnick?" And so he called up Larry Magid, who basically ran all of that at that time. I think it was not Live Nation yet. I think it was Clear. I think it was
Clear Channel.
Either Clear Channel,
SFX.
Or SFX. I think it was at the end of SFX. It was right at the end of SFX, right? And so he calls Larry Magid at home, and then Larry Magid then asks to talk to the production manager.
Oh boy!
And so the production manager slinks off, comes back, and says to Butch, "You guys can do whatever you want." I mean, he's clearly. And then the punchline for me of the story, and I don't know if you could say, if you remember this, is you and Butch came out with the Slip when the Slip opened. I mean, they were only the opener; they were on the bill, but it's just a great moment.
That's me and Mark together, dude. Please scan that and send it to me, please. Sure. Oh wow, you're killing me, dude, because you forget about how much you forget. Wow.
It was amazing. Aside from the fact that musically it was pretty awesome, just the idea of watching Butch do his thing, because you get his dander up and he was good to go. That was it. Like somebody who's 20 minutes late, they don't get it. They're not allowed there. You're kicking them off the bill, which is kind of like my bill, by the way, because that was our tour. I put that bill together, and just to watch the fire in Butch's eyes, and then have him call Larry Magid at home was just
it didn't take much to get Butch fired up, especially before he quit drinking. My favorite was to be in a restaurant with him, and then he would get going about Republicans, not caring at all who was around. Basically, he could almost close the whole restaurant. But the thing about Butch was his intention was always 100% right. He would just drop a grenade and I can relate to that because I'm more of a hothead. And I'm not learning. I'm learning late lessons about diplomacy, which really for me is just shut up. But Butch doesn't have that. He didn't have that. There's no shutting up. But at least his intention was always 100% right. You just had to be ready for the grenade.
And he was super pure. He deeply felt that in the moment. He just was not posturing. You got him going. I respect that.
And I had that done for me as well. I remember we had this little instrumental fusion band in Washington, D.C. when we were teenagers. And the Dixie Dregs came to town and played, and we somehow got a gig opening for them. We could hardly even get a gig in D.C. A gig. We would just have to play in our basements, And back then, the sound man was just I guess basically we were on time or everything, but maybe their sound check went long or something or whatever. He decided there wasn't enough time for us to have a sound check. And dude, Steve Morse came with the grenade. He was like, absolutely not. These guys are really good musicians and they're going to get a sound. And he just stuck up for it and forced it. And I never forgot that, man. And I've got to play with him much, much later, ironically with the Colonel, which was not how I thought I was going to play with Steve.
Fair.
Playing the psycho bluegrass, that sounds like it's on acid, but actually isn't. Yeah, too much.
Well, I don't know. I just feel like, people out there doing, just musicians, let's say, just stick with that, just acting in a righteous way, just doing, there's something to that. Like, that always inspires me to see people, and even if it's off stage, I always feel like that just reflects what's happening on stage. I think the way that I carry myself, and this is a Colonel thing, take your work seriously, don't take yourself seriously.
Absolutely.
And but that's also, I learned that from the Grateful Dead indirectly, right? I learned that from Fish indirectly. But I've heard Colonel say that a number of times, and I'm like, yeah, that's the way I want to walk through life, and I think that's really, really important.
I do too, man. I think it's of supreme importance because it makes you also remember to play. We play music, and we don't work it. It's not that we don't do work, but I love that it's called playing because it just reminds you that's the foundation this is built on. Play. It's okay to be serious. Like, I'm going to have fun playing soccer. I can take it very seriously and want to get really good and excel at it. But if it's not fun anymore, then nobody wants to work soccer. You want to play it. Another thing he said that always that I've been thinking about a lot more now. He said, respect is an evil that corrodes the mind. And I've wrestled with that one because, we all want to be respected. Being disrespected sucks. If you grew up Black or Jewish like we did, you know what that feels like, and it's not a good feeling. But I always now I'm starting to come around to his way of feeling about it, I think. And I think it has more to do with what you said, connected to what you said about take things seriously. Don't take yourself seriously, like take your work seriously or your play seriously, but these are fine lines, but it's just in my head. I'm thinking about, as we look at conflicts that are going on right now, it's like, why do we have a conflict? A lot of conflicts that we have are because we feel like we're not being treated fairly, or we feel like we're being disrespected. I mean, that's what gangs are. You're dissing me, you're disrespecting. And I think that's what some of what Bruce might have been trying to get at, that we don't get too caught up in the need to have status, maybe. I don't know. I'm asking really more than saying.
I think that's fair. I think that turns on being egoless, because then you don't feel so disrespected. That's irrelevant. It's like this. Another way that I phrase it sometimes.
Exactly. Who am I anyway?
Right. Well, listen. Of course, at the end of the day, right? Everyone should say that, to my mind. But it's like, there's a difference between being nice and being kind. Yes. And nice people are okay. They're polite, but and that's a way that they go through life. But are you kind? That's what it comes. That's what I aspire to be. I'm not saying I hit it, but that's what I aspire to. Obviously, Grateful Dead, right? Let's toss that one out there. But I think it's deeper than that. But still, on the other hand, it's no deeper than that. Like, it's all right there on the surface. Are you kind?
Exactly. To me, it's like always binary. It's not complicated. Like, we could say all these situations are complicated, but they're really binary, right? Like, are you kind? Like in the current situation, we're all dealing with the Middle East stuff, and it's hard. I live in Boca Raton, Florida. 95% of my friends here are Jewish. It's been, and it's a drag for everybody, whether you're Jewish or not, or whether you have Jewish friends or not. But when I look at it on the face of it, I'm like, okay, Teal, just take all of it and distill it down, make it binary. What is it? And then I listen to leaders on both sides. And what I do is I hear leaders on both sides making excuses why they have to kill innocent children, women, non-combatants, right? Just on a basic level, if I just distill it all down. And what that does is it leaves all the innocents on both sides completely fucked. You know? So that's why I just have to go like I have to approach it from just a kindness. Now I know this is not the planet to try to be kind, you know, good luck. You're going to have to run like a rabbit all the time, you know, but I'm okay with that. Like, I want to move to Costa Rica. I don't feel safe here after January 6th. I can't imagine living in the Middle East right now on either side, right? Like, so I just am like going to run like a rabbit because I got small kids too.
No,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, listen.
That's my solution for me.
I think empathy is a superpower, and I think there are not enough people who are able to tap into that.
No, definitely not. And we see it in America. Everything is kind of like on steroids here, you know, and not that it's not in other places, because everywhere it has its, I guess, the same thing in some different form, but we could see it happening here now. Like, it's really, the mask is coming off of it, and it's frightening. I'm glad that I play music and that we're like involved in the arts, so that I know that the main thrust of my life is providing not that. I'm not selling fentanyl. I'm not selling arms. I'm not, you know, because some people are doing great through this conflict, right? Yeah, wherever the arms dealers are, they're having parties right now. Yeah. It's like the roaring 20s, you know?
Well, I mean, some of this, it is amazing how it goes, right? Goes and comes back around. But by the same token, it's also new, you know, and there are new ways to wage war. There are new ways to think about it. There's new ways to anticipate it and all of that. But, you know, as someone who I spent many years in grad school studying history, right? American history, you know, you just see how that all comes around. By the way, I was thinking of our late friend Butch, right? Who had that place in France that after 2016, he's like, okay, that's it.
You know what did it for him?
I'm sorry?
You know what did it for him was Sarah Palin. I liken it to a car. I tell people nowadays, I go, you know, when you hear a car make a bad sound, you know, not a normal sound, and then you just don't deal with it, what's going to happen? What's going to happen, right? So, like, for Butch, Sarah Palin was that sound. For my wife, Trump getting elected was that sound. Now, if you grew up Black, you've been hearing that sound since you got here, but January 6th was that sound for me. And and the school shootings are that sound. I told my wife, look, we gotta go somewhere. If it's just like, just wait this out, you know, like it's the thing's boiling over, and let's go somewhere till let it boil over and pass, and not have our kids get caught in the crossfire, you know.
Hey, listen, if your kids just changes the whole calculus. But by the way, I don't have it with me. I have my like little random Oteil ephemera around me scattered about. But this show at the TLA, there's a picture of you and Butch holding my infant daughter, who my wife brought to that one show on the tour, and to see her now, like, out there. How old is
she now?
She's 24. She's out there in the world doing her thing. She's working She's working at a documentary film festival this weekend, and making her way and doing her thing. And it's just amazing to think about.
Documentaries is what I live off of, dude. Because it's like what you said, studying history. I heard the greatest quote. It said, "History doesn't repeat itself, but it sure does rhyme."
Yeah.
So tell me, let's talk about the Shapiro book coming out. It's coming out in paperback now.
It just came out this week in paper. And, you know, I don't know. Listen, I know that you've seen Peter in action for many, many, many years.
Yes.
You know, I first met him at Wetlands. Shortly after he took over that gig, I remember Larry Block, and then Larry Block moving on. And by the way, if people want to check it out, right, I did make this documentary on Wetlands Preserved. You can find it on YouTube. Check it out for free. It's out there in the world. We did okay. I was pretty happy with it. You know, we were on the Sundance Channel for a while after it came out, and all that jazz. And Oteil and a number of other fine folks appear in it. But I remember when Peter came on and thinking, look at that. And he wasn't that much younger than I was, but I still thought, look at that kid. What's he gonna do?
I mean, we look like kids, dude. It's so funny to see those pictures, and I'm just like, Oh my goodness. You don't realize how young you are. Kind of seeing myself like how the Colonel saw me, you know.
Well,
But we were
there's that picture from the first year of the Jammies, which, by the way, you were at
yep.
because Bruce borrowed the tour bus and brought Frog Wings there, and then you went to Boston to play at Great Woods the next day. So that was like for me, it was Frog Wings with Susan that played.
Wait a minute. Bruce commandeered your
I'm
tour
sorry,
bus.
I apologize, Butch.
Or Butch did.
I'm sorry, Butch commandeered a tour bus. Yeah, he did.
Same thing.
He's like, Dr. Dean, we got to be at this Jammy show. You Jammy show, yeah, but we got to be there. And so
we're gonna need that bus.
So he took a tour bus, and
oh, that's so funny.
And you guys, but there's a picture. It's you, Peter, and Derek backstage at that first Jammies in 2000. And I look at the three of you, and I'm like, oh gosh, you know.
Yeah, boy. You know what's so funny? Like we didn't even have to. I think people characterize like having a vision differently than like what it was at the time. Like, yes, our vision was so true, but we were just so immersed in it, we couldn't even see anything else. You know? I guess maybe that is the classic definition of it, maybe.
That's the majesty of it, man. I don't know. For me, as someone who's on the other side of the stage, that's the majesty of it.
We had nothing to lose, right? I mean, we were young, and we were young, and we were like, I guess we're going for it, you know.
Yeah, man, I don't know. You could feel that. That really, I think back. Listen, there's a ton of great stuff that's happening today, and there's a ton of great stuff that's always happening out there.
Always,
but I think back on that time, and I think back on a lot of times. Right? I don't want to elevate any one moment, but having said that, to be there when you were just sort of finding your way, not really giving an F, and just doing what felt right to you in the moment was freaking amazing. Was freaking amazing.
The funny thing too for us personally was that, you know, I had been through all these bands. We were just trying to make a living. We were playing weddings, top 40 cover bands, jazz gigs, reggae gigs, Latin gigs, whatever, not making any money. There were a bunch of bands that I had played with that were put together to try to get a record deal. They wrote all this material. I learned it. We played it. They showcased. They didn't get signed. The band never played again. I was like, wow, you know, like all that work for nothing, you know, and I was so depressed. And finally I met the Colonel, thanks to Jeff's site, apartment Q258. And he said, well, we're not going to make any money, but we're going to have the maximum amount of fun. And I was like, okay. And that was the first time I ever did anything that was since my teenage years playing in fusion bands, which we knew we wouldn't be able to make a living doing that. That we just said, screw it. I had nothing to lose. I was already broke. And the gigs that I could have done to make money, I didn't even want to do them, you know? And we just did this madness. And then there were these bands that liked us, Widespread and Blues Traveler Visions. We're like, well, they like it, you know? And the freaks in Atlanta, the witches and all the artists and the freak community in Atlanta and Little 5 Points, they liked it, but that was a real microcosm. And then those guys helped us reach a bigger macrocosm of that same thing, you know. And we got a record deal. I was like, what? Bruce didn't even have a name. He changed the name once a week. Remember the band, the album Arkansas? So we'd be the Arkansas Travelers one week. We'd be the Arkansas Tourists the next week. We played every Monday night. We'd be the Arkansas State Birds, the Arkansas this and the Arkansas that. And then he gets in a room with Phil Walden and he says, Bruce, you got to quit changing the name. You got to settle on one. What's it going to be? And Bruce goes, how about Aquarium Rescue Unit? Just right off the top of his head. Just boom. That was, all right, that's fine. They said it and they wrote it in stone in a contract. You know, it's just like, I was like, how do we get a record deal doing this crazy shit? Are you kidding me? We tried to confound everyone. That's what's the mashing the bluegrass with the Delta blues, with the jazz, with the funk, with the gospel, we're Jackson Pollocking all of it at the same time, Bruce would literally command us to try to drive everyone out of the room. You know, and we got a record deal. I was like, what?
I was at one of those shows. It was in Cambridge, I think in '89. It was at this place called Night Stage. Where
Night Stage, yes.
Where it happened. It happened.
I remember Magic that night. I remember Magic.
It was awesome. But there was that moment where a bunch of people fled. And then Colonel addressed that. He's like, all right, we got rid of all the, I can't remember the term that he used.
That was his intention. He was like, the people that came thinking it was going to be one thing because they read or they heard on the radio or someone told me, and he's like, oh no. He got that from Sun Ra. Sun Ra. I saw this happen. He took me to see Sun Ra at the Cotton Club in Atlanta. And so Sun Ra had been on the radio and all this stuff, and it was like the thing to come see. For people that didn't really know what they were getting into, but were told it was the thing to come see. So Sun Ra wanted to get rid of all those people so he could do his thing with the full energy in the right place. So he comes out waving this big long chain with like a little silver disco ball or something shiny on the end of it. And it's going around and around and around. And it's like, it's kind of like a little hypnotizing. And then he looks at the crowd and he goes, y'all sure look good tonight. How long you been dead? And then he points at Marshall Allen right when he hits the word dead. And Marshall sticks his horn up over the microphone and plays the most ungodly. He flings open the gates of hell wide open. Cerebus comes rushing out, the three-headed dog, biting, and you'd see whole tables getting up and leaving, right? And it's Colonel Bruce leans over to me and he goes, pardon my language, he goes, these suit and tie motherfuckers getting out of here like it's a fire drill.
Yeah.
You know what I remember about Night Stage? But the feeling of ghosts being in the room. That's what I remember. The feeling of ghosts.
It was, I don't know. It was pretty amazing. I mean, I think I had heard maybe that's what sometimes would happen, but I'd never really seen it. Like at Wetlands, like people knew who you were.
Oh, they were down
they were
for
there
it
to see you.
And the farther out we went, they were, give me more. Yeah.
Right. But that was the first time. There's a couple, right? But that was the first time I had seen it. It was a little bit different. It wasn't your people wasn't all your people. And that happened. And that stuck with me, man. Like that led me to I don't think I can overstate this. Like that set me on a certain path because I just, I always aspire to be inner-directed, not other-directed, to quote David Reisman, the sociologist from the 1950s. Like, I just think you have to have something inside. And so to see it manifested musically in that way, not that I hadn't already seen the Grateful Dead, and I'd already seen, and they do it their own way, but to really see it like that was so stark and so profound in terms of what you were doing that, I don't know, on my honor, so jambands.com, which by the way, celebrated our 25th year.
Oh, congratulations.
This year thing is a part of that. Like that sort of came out of that in its own way. There were people there like myself who I'd sort of met online, who were still out there. Jesse Jarno was one of my first columnists. Benji Eisen, who's out there sort of doing his thing. Andy Jeff Waffle, who was still doing his thing. Andy Gaindeal. These were just people, and they all believed in just what they were hearing, what was coming off
what was happening that moment. I know it's like you don't even know what it is,
right?
But it's so strong, and you can talk as long as you want about trying to define what it is. It doesn't matter. It's like it's that thing, and that's the thing that I needed for the Allman Brothers and Dead and Company. Like that's what it's about. It's just that thing. It could come in every kind of way. It will come in every kind of way. But if you're looking for that thing, you'll find it. And that will unite you with everyone on the planet. That's a deep thing, man. And allow you to truly be yourself. What Bruce did there by intentionally trying to get people out of the room and me seeing that's what he wants. and me participating in that leads me to my other favorite mantra nowadays. And I want to have a hat and a t-shirt made, which is, I'm not for everybody. You know, I can't please everybody. So all I can do is be what I am, turn that up to 10, give it as a gift. And whoever resonates with that, then we're good. And it's freed me from have to do it any other way. I just literally have to be brave enough to take my clothes off and be myself, which is a scary thing that's why this country's so hung up, man. We're so bullying and all that. I mean, we can't just be ourselves. It's something we need to heal us, you know.
One brief point relative to that. I do feel like I also have my son is younger than my daughter, and I see the interactions of people their age and younger. And I actually do have a pretty good feeling about it's going to take a little while, but I'm optimistic about what that generation is going to be able to offer and where they come from and their perspectives and the empathy that they have and the kindness that they offer.
They are kind, man. My son is so kind. Kavi is too. That generation. I agree with you. It's I didn't want to have children because I'd given up on society and myself at that point too. But as soon as he was born, I saw this hope. I remember Paige McConnell trying to tell me that when we were with Vita Blue. This is before I had met my wife, and I was hopeless about myself, certainly hopeless about the world, you know. And he said, you know, my daughter gives me hope, just her existence. And I didn't fully understand that until I had Nigel. And now that he's growing, and him and his friend, they're so kind. They're so empathetic. It's unbelievable. And I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that this society does not take that or beat it down or anything. You know, I want that to flourish. It's got to.
I think they get that. And I think they're sort of undeterred in their collective vision. I don't know. I do feel good. Like, and I'm not right now. This is a difficult moment. I want to make that clear.
I'm with you. I'm with you.
But I do think we're gonna come out the other side. Hey, by the way, since you mentioned Vita Blue, I do want to point this out too. I'm fairly confident that you, sir, are the artist. Relics Magazine, by the way, is going to celebrate its 50th anniversary in 2024. You're the person I think has been on the cover the most times with different groups, right? Here you are with Vita Blue. Yeah, you. Here you are with the ABB. And by the way, I was talking to Danny Clinch about this last week. This is the first time he actually shot the ABB. Is this cover?
Yeah, because Kirk, I just had Kirk on the podcast. He usually did it.
Yeah, so Danny had always wanted to do it. I think they finally got a chance.
I remember that session now too. Oh, you just gave me a good memory. I remember that.
And then, right? Dead and Company. So, I mean, you're on there with three different acts. And, you know, one day we'll get you on there. You'll yet be on there with one more, no doubt. You know,
I'm surprised I wasn't on there with Tedeschi Trucks Band.
what happened? What you are and you aren't, because it's just the two of them on the cover.
But see, still,
you would have been. And frankly,
I was there.
Absolutely.
I'm on the inside, right?
Plus, by the way, yeah, there's this one too. You're not in this image, but ARU is on the cover. This was our Horde '92 celebration. But so. You're the record holder. You are the nexus in many respects. There are a lot of this.
So it's funny because I know zero about rock and roll. You know, one of the funniest ironies of my life is that I learned rock and roll from the people that created it. You know, I would be on the bus or hanging out with the Allman Brothers, you know, and they would say something about Eric, you know, and maybe there's a couple of conversations going on at the same time. And it takes me a second or a minute to realize they're talking about Eric Clapton or whoever, you know, like, yes. And so it's funny to like learn all this history from the people that helped create it and were there. You know, there's a lot of people gone now, obviously, but all my friendships with Yorma, you know, I teach at Yorma's music camp at Fur Peace Ranch. I used to teach there a bunch. And then when I think maybe it was reading Phil's book, this before even Dead and Company, where I was just trying to learn about the Dead. And you come to realize Yorma was one of their heroes. And it's like, so I'm like having interactions with Yorma just because I think he's cool. Like I don't even know all his. I mean, I know Jefferson Airplane, okay, but I know that like I know every other rock and roll. I didn't have their records. Couldn't tell you the songs, blah blah blah. I just know they were a famous rock band. But me and Jorma just had a vibe together, and so the older I get and the more I learn about the people that I've been working with and the whole rock and roll thing, the more my mind is blown. It's like still very fresh. Every day I learn something else or I'll be like, Rhea sent me, or I think Rhea posted a picture of Mickey Hart's daughter, and we're friends now, and she posted a picture of her on stage with the Dead, and it was Jimmy Herring was in the foreground, and right next to him is Bob Dylan. I was like, oh shit, I forgot Jimmy played with Bob Dylan. It's
I mean, right, and that happened because of Bruce, by the way. Going taking it all back around.
Exactly. So if you think that if you think to not take him seriously, and all these people along the way, like ask him. Greg used to be terrified of Bruce. It was so funny. But he perceived correctly. Greg was right. He perceived the ET nature of Colonel Bruce Hampton. He was like, yeah, man, I don't know what's going on there, bro. But, but me, because I like weirdness and weird people, I like the anomalous, So funny. Man, it's so great to talk to you about all this. It's funny how instrumental you have been in giving me perspective on my own life. It's really weird, man. So I have to thank you for that.
Well, that's kind of you. So I do appreciate that. I don't know. It's been fun to be again. We know we're in and out. We see each other here and there and this and that. But I just dig what you do, and it's just so much fun to watch you sort of continue on your path, thinking back to Wetlands or thinking back to like Night Stage, all of that,
right?
And anything. I've seen you do. It's just been amazing, and it's just obviously there's so much still yet to come. I think of Yorma, right? And I just interviewed him, and he's still doing his thing.
Is he not the best storyteller of all time? God.
He comes at it that same way, that same right way too, where he's almost like incidental. He's can be the butt of his own jokes. Like despite being such a gifted guitar player, both electric and acoustic, that he has that perspective. I think that informs what he does. I love hearing him just talk about Reverend Gary Davis and that sort. It's just amazing to think what he's been through.
Colonel Bruce is into big time. And I want to highlight what you said about being the butt of your own joke. That's this crucial thing that joins what you're talking about, take what you do serious, don't take yourself seriously. You have to be able to be the butt of your own joke. That's what Bruce always meant by you have to have a higher butt level consciousness, like the mirrors of embarrassment. That has to be part of it for it to be really real for him. That's just his preference. Not saying that everybody has to do that, but I like that part, and that's probably where I related to Yorma also, and the Grateful Dead. You got to be willing to fail and fall down and let everybody see it.
Listen, again, that's what I've seen you do. That's what I've seen the people who I enjoy and inspire me do, and that's sort of the fun of the glory of the gig. From what I do. From my perspective, is just to get a chance to be out there, seeing all that happen, and talking a little bit about it. Real quick, I know we're up against it. In terms of
Peter's book, I got plenty of time, bro.
Well, that's right. I mean, Peter's book. The thing that I've always loved about Peter, and people see his name on things, but I don't think they have a sense of just how much he puts into everything. Like if a show sold out, he doesn't care. He's still angling to add guests to do all of this. It's all about what does he want to see out there in the audience, and what he wants to see is what you want to see, what I want to see. And so writing this book with him was really, really fun to take that time
a good book, man.
With him and just hear him riff on a bunch of things that that he put together and how he approached it. And he does have a way of thinking about this that I think people don't understand. And in part, maybe, he came at this as a filmmaker. When Larry Block invited him to take over Wetlands, he was a filmmaker. I think that's the path that he thought he was going to follow. Now, he had made a documentary when he was at Northwestern, and Miles to Go, that I'm sure people have seen. There's a great footage that sometimes appears off and on socials where he miracles someone outside a big, outside a show, hands them a ticket, some vendor in Shakedown. And
what about that story of him having the footage of the outside and Justin having the footage of the inside for Grateful Dead 50, and they put it to talk about higher power at work. What?
Yeah. It's pretty amazing. I mean, he talks about that, by the way, in the book. People don't realize that. So, Peter's doing Dead 50, and he wants to do something during set break, wants to do it with Justin. And as they're talking about it, that's the moment where they realize, oh, we were at the same shows. You were just shooting inside. I was just shooting outside. And yeah, I mean, Kismet, serendipity, whatever, fate.
Whatever. I don't care about the semantics. Call it what you want. That's the stuff. That's the thing I'm chasing after. And that's what we're all doing. It's so beautiful to read that book and hear his story and find out all these things about him that I didn't know. But also, I'm in that story the whole time. It's just and I'm finding out all of what I didn't know because I was just a crazy shot out of a cannon 26-year-old, living in the moment. And wow, just a book is, thank you for that.
I would say so. Like the way we structured it, our goal with every chapter was, as I was working with him to write it, is every chapter. You'd hear a little bit of his sort of his wisdom, his philosophy. I'll call it wisdom. He wouldn't. His philosophy as to how he did something. We'd have some really funny story that was relevant, and you'd get an insight into the scene as well that people don't get to see. And I do think it really balances all three of those. So depending whatever you want to bring to it, wherever you're coming from, I think you can really find something that would work for you. I'm very, very proud. It was super fun working with him on it. It's one of my favorite things that I've done over the course. So good.
I love the full integration of all of it. Like every promoter, the writers, that what you do, what Peter was doing, what we were doing, like it all, and the audience. I mean, of course we can't because that's what we're all doing it for. But I love that when you get old enough and enough time passes, and I agree it is wisdom because he made it this far. Back then it was a gamble, right? And we took a gamble based on a philosophy, but now it's wisdom because that philosophy is proved to be correct, right? Like we were all seeking this thing at this moment, this feeling, and without each other it wouldn't have happened. Like without Peter, there's no stage for us to play on. There's nothing for you without the audience to see the stage. There's nothing for you to write about. It's we're really blessed, man. We're really blessed.
To me, it all comes down. The other thing, it all comes down to intention. Like, yes. That's what, if I'm going to write about an artist, I want to write about an artist who has just intention, like pure intention, righteous intention, something that matters. And I do think that's maybe the through line if you think about who we cover in Relics. Certainly what interests or animates me is just that. And there's a certain joy that I take in getting to hear the artist share that and present that to the world a little bit here and there. But that's what brings me out. I want to see how that manifests itself. By the way, I'm thinking of Peter. He just had Dylan at the Cap. And I know for a fact, and I won't say the story, but I know that, show sold out. He's doing just fine, whatever. And like day of, he's working some stuff. Like he's trying to make something happen that's really, really cool. And but it ended up being a little too complex and didn't go down. Like, dude is trying. That's the other thing. Like, I want to work with people who are trying, who are not satisfied, who are not self-satisfied, who are always out there looking for what's next, and they're trying. I just think that's super important as
It
well.
is, because when we get away with it, it's a miracle. We gamble our entire lives on it. I'm gambling my life, my wife's life, my kids' lives. Like, I'm not just now. I'm taking care of my mom, gambling my mom's life on all everybody. I'm now the patriarch of my family since my older brother and my dad died. There's a lot of people counting on me, and it's when you get away with it, when it all works, it's a miracle. And so, yeah, I want to see that same thing too. When someone is gambling that much on this pure intention, and they're only trying to do something good, man. I mean, you've only been trying to do something good with the thrust of your life's work the whole time. And all the people, and Peter Shapiro, and everybody, every crew member at the Cap, and every other club and venue, you know what I mean? It's yeah.
Well, that's like, again, from my perspective on what you do, and I'll bring it back. So I wrote this book. I wrote Popper's book, and we sort of got lost because the publicist left basically the day it came out. It's a great book. Popper would just we do it once a week. He'd burn one down and then riff, and then we put it together, and it was pretty amazing. But to going back to his idea of a mitzvah, that's sort of how I feel when I'm able to do. I'm fortunate to do that in getting to share. Tell people about Lovely View of Heaven, or whatever, you know what I mean, or anything else that's out. Like, I feel like there's something to be said for being able to do that. There are things that I'm passionate about, and I do think ideally life is a balance, but I do think that, and that's what animates me, and that's sort of how I view it in many respects.
And we need you and appreciate you. I mean, what you wrote, about my record and stuff, because you can imagine the kind of fear and trembling that I might have, doing these sacred songs and putting my spin fully on it. I was like, I'm not for everybody. I had to just adopt that. Like, come on, Oteil, you got to just do it how you would do it. And to hear, I know a lot of people are pulling for me, and I know you are, but I also know you wouldn't lie to me. So to hear your words, it really means a lot, and your support, and just for what you've always done. And like you say, we're not done. We are now bringing up the next generations of musicians. And I mean, are you mentoring some young writers? I would imagine, like that's happening in my life,
That's right. By the way, just go back to you real quick. I mean, intention. Going back to your record. I mean, just in talking to you about it. I mean, there's intention and there's execution. Like, one hopes that both are there. I think, right? I have to say that, right? But I think a lot of times they're entwined. One does inform the other, but you have to have, the skill set and the like. And to my mind, both are there for you in that record. But it was fun, just, and I could hear your intention even before you and I spoke about it, right? You can hear what's there. And I won't tell the story, but you and I discussed, there was a moment when I was listening to this record, I just pulled aside. I was driving the first time I heard it, and I just wanted to, one of the songs, I just wanted to drink it all in, because there was a moment for me. And, that's the other thing. That's why we want to have moments. That's why, we want to see what people, hear what people such as yourself are doing. That's what brings us, that's what brings us back, That
makes me feel so good, man, because all you want, you're hoping that what I want when I listen to music, there's certain people, and they're magic people, and they can open up these portals. And when that portal's open, like, all this bad stuff just, it's not that it goes away. It's that you're reminded that this is still there too. And it's so strong, and it has so much power to give hope and keep us going through the bad times, And so it means everything for me to hear someone say, yeah, I had to pull my car over, because that means I opened that portal for them, and they felt it the way I felt it. And they wanted to just sit there and look through on the other side, or maybe go step through it or whatever. So thank you so much for that. That means everything.
And I think that hits on maybe just the one last is then the beauty of all of this too is then you take that, me as a listener, and you have that, but you can apply that elsewhere in life, right?
Yes.
It's not just solely self-indulgent, like I'm enjoying this because it's
Yes.
profound and it's amazing, but hopefully, ideally, I'm doing something with that. You
That's
know,
the mitzvah. We must, it must spread. You have to give it away, and a lot of it, it's like it makes it, our gambling our entire lives on this intention is our sacrifice that we make, and then we give it all away. Yeah, we're making a living, we're charging for, you got to charge whatever for the book. That's the practical side. But we know, look, man, if we're successful in what we're giving, it's worth way more than the price of a CD or a book. This is wisdom and emotions and intentions and feelings and history that it will pass to my children, and your children, and pass on. Like you say, we give it away even just horizontally at the moment of doing it to other people our age. So it's a great. We're super lucky, aren't we?
yes. Well, that's why I like to end. I salute you, man. Like I don't know, like that's it, you giving of yourself that way is ultimately what what enables me and people like me out there to have the experiences that we do, to learn the lessons that we've learned and take that and apply it and make something of it. But for the fact that people are like yourself, sir, are gambling and taking those chances, what could we be doing? So I just want to I want to go out applauding you for everything that you've done, Oteil. Honestly,
hey man, thank you.
Amazing.
Like, we got to do so. My mom, we get born here. I feel like we land just like aliens. We're landing here. It's like, well, we got to do something. Let's do something good. Let's do something fun. Let's play. And as long as there's so much about this thing that I was born into that I hate, and that I'm powerless to change, but if the fact that we have found a way to play and still do what we would like somewhat on our terms, the foundation of it is on our terms. We have to be practical and live in this world, but the foundation of it is on our terms. And to get the chance to do that is a great, great gift. So, we got to do something. Let's do something good. Thank you for doing something good. And thank you for helping me just selfishly put my life into perspective. I didn't get to play with all my heroes and stuff. And it's like, but hey, look what you did do. Look at all. And I can't, how hard it is to be objective. And through someone like you, I can be like, wow, okay. I could tell my kids I did something, all right. I'm not Coltrane, but, I'm not Miles Davis, but we always compare, right? So, but I feel like you helped me have that kind of objectivity. So thank you for everything, man. Thank you for doing the podcast today, for sure.
Super fun.
Always good to see. I hope I see you soon somewhere. When's the last gig that I saw you at?
You just came through Rhode Island, but I wasn't. You just came through. I missed a chance when you came through.
Band.
And with your band,
you might have seen me, but I couldn't see you because of the pandemic.
No, I wasn't there. I couldn't make. I was not. I actually was not around. That I had to be somewhere else in the world at that moment.
Did you make any of the Dead and Company shows?
I saw a couple. I saw a couple there. I mean, so that is actually this summer would have been the last time I would have seen you.
I just didn't get to see you in person then. Well, I'm glad, because that summer, that was a good summer.
There was some sweet energy coming off the stage. It felt pretty good. So I look forward to I know you're doing stuff at the end of the year down in your neck of the woods, and
yes, I'm so shocked that Bob is going to set foot in the state of Florida. I figured he would have been scared he would burst into flames as soon as he crossed the state line, even if he was 30,000 feet in the air. But he's coming, and shout out to all my Florida deadheads, because they're always and rightfully complaining that we don't show them enough love. So yeah, Bob's coming down, and I'm playing like kind of next door afterwards. at the end of the year. So that's going to be fun. Then we got Dead Ahead in Mexico. So next time, now that things have calmed down, hopefully I will get to see you at one of the shows where we can actually hang a little bit.
I'm just happy, man. Honestly, I'm just happy to watch you on the stage doing your thing. It's always a delight to talk to you, without question. But I'm just here to see you do your thing. That's what inspires me, man.
Well, bless you for all your work. Thanks for coming on the podcast, and let's do it. You got my number, man. If anything's happening and you got a hot one something to talk about, text me. We'll have you on. We can, even if it's a short segment, it'll be the Budnick's Corner, and we'll get the latest and greatest.
Duly noted and appreciated.
All right. Bless you, brother. Thanks for coming on.